We are exposing to you some very serious defects, actually it's depravity, in the United States District Court, Southern District of New York, in the name of a judge, Robert W. Sweet, the name of a U.S. attorney, Mary Jo White, her assistant, Rachel R. Godsell, Deputy Marshal at White Plains Federal Courthouse, Lawrence Nevins, a Pinkerton there named Frank Weber, another Pinkerton there named Frank Esposito, and a third Pinkerton there named John Walsh. And John Walsh just took Glendora's tape recorder and just tossed it into the air, and it fell on the desk. And all of these bad people that I've just mentioned to you, these are all the evil characters in this drama. They all know that that was done. They all lie about it, and they are all fugitives about it. And also in this drama is the Pinkerton so-called security and detective agency, a bunch of hoodlums, headed by James P. McCloskey, a so-called CEO, and Dennis R. Brown, a so-called president. That's the cast of evil characters that we are exposing, and we have worked so hard on this, telling you about it, and then we have worked so hard on it with the legal papers and keeping track of their lies, their thievery, and their cheats. And this whole Pinkerton story is 62 volumes, and this one is volume 61, so hopefully we might even get through it today and go on to something else. All righty, take a pause. Oh, yeah, okay, take a pause. And be sure to send our best wishes to Angelo Cianciulli. Angelo Cianciulli. Folks, exposing the harm done by the Pinkertons to America and that Deputy Marshal and all that cast of evil characters I just read you, $6,929.71 print, post, and travel. 3,479 3/4 hours. $869,937.50 in legal labor. 19,686 pages of bad record. 61 volumes, 7 file drawers, actually 62. 3,172 lies by 52 conspirators, and it is all adds up to a civil RICO. You know what RICO stands for? Racketeer Influence Crime Organization. Title 18 U.S. Code. 1963, I guess it is. 159 mailings, 204 TV reports, 1/2 hour each, plus the 21 Pinkertons, that would be 225, 26 TV reports. February 17, 1997 to July 11, 1999. 2 years, 4 months of tradership to the USA. But I do have good news for you. One of the worst Pinkertons of all, Bruiser Ken, Kenneth H. Mildworm, that is his name, M-I-L-D-W-R-M, is out of the Uniondale court. We have a tip-off on a recorded message on the telephone that he was fired, that he's out of there, that he's on his own. And I called up yesterday, I guess it was, and asked for him. And I was told he was no longer there. So you can tell me that public access works. We got rid of him. So that's 1 down, and now we got about 14 to go. Those stats were as of June the 12th this year. Okay, moving forward, we have here Patricia Wald, who is a circuit judge on the District of Columbia Circuit. She knows nothing about justice, absolutely nothing, and she has been appointed to the International War Crimes Tribunal, and I have wrote, sent it public so everybody could see it, a big postcard with this article from the New York Times on the back. Whoops, Yeah, she looks good upside down. Glendora has personal knowledge that this woman is not fit for the International Tribunal. That's Patricia Wald, W-A-L-D, a United States Court of Appeals circuit judge. You know why they call them circuit judges? Because they go around in circles. These are Bruiser Ken logs, and this is the United States District Court, District of New York. No, this is the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit, a crooked bunch from top to bottom, telling me that I have to ask for leave to appeal Glendora versus Pinkerton, the cheat suite. Now you see, we have a wonderful government, and we have wonderful laws, folks. It gives you a thrill, it puts chills up and down your spine to read our wonderful laws. But they are in bad hands. It's simply that. And you and I have to rescue the United States from these crooks, these culprits. United States District Court, District of Massachusetts, Glendora versus Eugene H. Nickerson. That is not that's not your story. That's in the Eastern District of New York. You are in the Southern District of New York. So we move out of the Massachusetts story, and we go into, that's more Massachusetts stuff. Now we're at this liar for hire. His name is Manister, Todd J. Manister, at 99 Jericho Turnpike, Jericho, New York. More Manister malpractice. He sends a judgment, and the judgment is not signed. He returns to, so Glendora returns it to the incompetent Manister. Both he and the enclosed are nullities. This is a copy to you, Glendora's TV audience, the Center for Judicial Accountability, Incorporated, to R.W. Sweet, the crooked United States District Judge, Senior Judge, to Parkinson, James Parkinson, who is the clerk of the crooked United States District Court, Southern District of New York, to McCloskey, Pinkerton, and Brown, as I told you, the CEO and president of this gangster organization, Pinkerton, and to Nevins, Esposito, Walsh, and Weber, and to Manister, yours in truth, Glendora. And here's the judgment that he sends that is not signed, and there is no such clerk as James M. Parkinson. Parkinson spells his name without an N, or the middle N, P-A-R-K-I-S-O-N. Parkinson, ignorant Manister, liar for hire for Pinkerton, McCloskey, and Brown. If there was no contract, how come neurotic Walsh was wearing a Pinkerton uniform? Alan Pinkerton is a bumbler from Abraham Lincoln assassination to Bruiser Ken. And the way he serves affirmation of service, Manister I'm talking about, he misrepresents. He's brought the number of lies up to 3,173. He doesn't know the difference between an affirmation as far as the state court goes and as far as the federal courts go. State courts require that you're over 21, that you're not a party to the action, that you wrap it in a addressed, properly wrapped envelope or package, and all this junk. And the federal courts have done away with that a long time ago, and Manister doesn't know the difference. And he said that it was addressed to Glendora, and using Glendora's last name. Glendora doesn't accept any mail from the United States courts or any court with her last name on it, because the plaintiff is Glendora. And he says he served it on Glendora's last name, but he did not. That's another lie. It's ignorant Manister. And then he has his secretary make out the affidavit of service, and then he notarizes it, and I call that I-N-C-E-S-T. Okay. You knew about Glenn Vickers, who says the solution to this whole thing is for us to make citizens' arrests upon these judges who violate our civil rights. Citizens' arrest. That's Glenn Vickers. and I will give you his telephone number. 516-587-5453. That's Babylon, New York. You know about Senator Charles Schumer, who writes to Gene Crescenzi, "Thank you for contacting me to express your opinion on the impeachment of 18 judges." Good, good, good. Go at them. Go at them. Impeach about 150 federal judges. Okay. Moving along here through volume 60. Another program that you should watch on TV is Lori Galgano, The Hidden Truth, where she reads these pitiful letters from prisoners who are abused in the prisons. And we've got to help them. Okay, these are dupes of the Manister incompetence, which continues. And he cheated. He sent a copy of his motion to dismiss to the court, but he didn't send it to me. I never received it. He did not send it to Glendora plaintiff. I was never served, and so I never had the opportunity to oppose his motion to dismiss on the grounds that there was no contract between Pinkerton John Walsh and Pinkerton at the time. That silly, neurotic, psychotic John Walsh threw the tape recorder into the air and it landed on the desk. He says there was no contract. Well, I say if there was no contract, again, how was it come he was wearing a Pinkerton uniform? Oh, yes. Well, that's satisfaction of judgment finally from the crooked U.S. attorney in the Eastern District. Thank heavens that Zachary Carter has left. I hope he takes Edgardo Ramos with him and Michael J. Goldberger. Now, this is Moulton and Gons, and this is Glendora versus Sweet, this crooked United States District Judge that I've been telling you about for 21 weeks. And I sued him in the United States District Court in Boston, and of course he had a buddy over there, and his buddy just set it up just fine. Strike in bowling alley number 9, and his buddy O'Toole, you and I have gone all over that, lied and cheated and dismissed Sweet for all of his nefarious deeds. Also in that lawsuit, I sued a very crooked lawyer named David Burchad, who has a racket of people who file derivative actions against big companies like Texaco.
my house. It's only 1,600 square feet, though. We're a little bit short. Oh, well, message 18.
I'll take it.
10:25 p.m. Friday, August 27th. I watched the program right now over that one time. I only agree with your viewpoint. Keep it up. The good work. I love you. Bye.
I love you too.
Message 19. 10:26 p.m. Friday, August 27th. You're joking as boring as your program. I just can't help watching it because it's a comedy. It's a comedy gets out. I'll let you know that. There's something more positive than public access. Try voting.
Try again.
End of messages. Enter command.
Unintelligible. Try again. So, Ed, well, thank you for offering me a house, but I don't think I'll take it. I don't have the lawyer instinct. You keep your house, Ed. Now, so I got to clean up this reporting on Bruiser Ken, and we were up to, see, these are all the, it's not bad, folks. This is volume 61. It's next to the last volume. There's 62 volumes, but big things are going on. This is the lawsuit, July 14th, 1999, Bastille Day, Glendora versus Eugene H. Nickerson, law clerk Hillary and law clerk Indira, Marilyn D. Gold, Todd J. Manister, a liar for hire, and one of the most inept at it. And I've seen a lot of inept lawyers. Michael J. Goldberg, another liar for hire, who is out. Full credit for that, as I told you. Robert W. Sweet and a bunch of crooks in the Southern District of New York, and the crooked U.S. Court of Appeals, Second Circuit. You know why they're called circuit judges? They go around in circles. Unfortunately, that is your U.S. Court of Appeals. I don't like this wireless microphone. See, somebody's telephoning and is picking it up, and it will actually hear the telephone conversation, and that's against the law. I've got to do something. I've got to get rid of this wireless microphone. Okay, it's gone for the time being. A whole bunch of people, crooked judges and law clerks and clerks in the United States District Court, District of Massachusetts, Boston. This is Eugene Nickerson. And this is Glendora's appeal of the Boston decision by a bad man named Stearns. We also sue U.S. West, Richard D. McCormick, and Charles Lillis, all of whom lost their company, their cable company. They're another group of crooked cable operators. Cablevision isn't the only one. And they lost their company, and then the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal and a bunch of their crooks, and then a bunch of crooks in White Plains, including the mayor and the common council, and then a bunch of corrupt judges in the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. So this lawsuit was filed. The lead defendant is Eugene H. Nickerson, who lives in Nassau County. And notice is hereby given that Glendora hereby appeals to the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit from the judgment. Describe it. The judgment is by a no-head named Stearns, Richard G. Stearns. And I happily describe it for you. It's superficial, hackneyed, preconceived, dirty judge protection, collusive, cursory, contrived, evasive, artificial, illegal, ignoble, Stygian, valueless, mean-spirited, un-American, meritless, buddyism, timid, antithetical to the consent of the government, excuse me, bad error, to the consent of the governed. You and I are the governed, and they can't do it without our consent. A civil recall in violation of 28 U.S. Code Section 144. If a judge is biased or prejudiced, he must immediately recuse. And there's another one saying almost the same thing, 455, 28 U.S. Code. Section 1983, violation of civil rights by somebody who works for the government. Section 1985, conspiracy. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 38, your right to a trial by jury. And Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 26 through 37, which is your right to interrogatories, depositions, inspection, admissions, and all those things. What is wrong with it? Glendora continues to describe it as aboriginal, it's a farce, it's a public disgrace, it's infra-dig, beneath their dignity. It has no arguable basis, it's fraught with error and abuse of discretion. It's unopposed, undefended, it's taxpayer waste of $130,000 per year. This is what a federal judge gets paid. I imagine a circuit judge gets paid a little bit more. It's another soul seller. It's incest. It's sans, quote, fair and impartial, unquote, a judge's task to screen jurors. Judges, I go into court and I see this over and over again. It's such a phony process. They're screening jurors for be fair and impartial, and the judge himself cannot be fair, or herself, and impartial. Senator Charles Schumer, Boston educated, is initiating impeachment of 18 federal judges. Stern's chicanery belongs in this batch. Glendora will give Schumer 25 more prospects. Now, I got to show you this letter, or did I show it to you? Well, it's worth seeing again. It's very, very important. This is Senator Charles Schumer, Democrat, New York. He went to Harvard, and he wrote this letter to a friend of mine, Gene Krasinski. Can you see that first line up there? Not really. I'll read it to you. Thank you for contacting me to express your opinion on the impeachment of 18 judges. I appreciate your taking the time to get in touch with me. I wish I had time to go buy a new mic. I thought this was the ideal mic. And then we have Glenn Vickers, who says that the answer is to go out and make citizens' arrests of these judges who violate your civil rights. Okay. And Glendora's doing more, describe it. Apostasy, more conduct prejudicial to the administration of the courts, the business of the courts, I should say. Which business is justice? And that's Title 28, 372, C1. Does not state what papers were read. No hearing. Obstruction of justice. This judge is obstructing justice because he's standing up for dirty putties. No interest in doing his taxpayer job, only self-interest, and America be darned. Corrupting youth of America, sophomoric 1 year. Law clerks. A paper a second grader could have written. Ignorance of the law. Lawless. 18 U.S. Code Section 1001. Misrepresentation to be reported on TV. The order of Richard G. Stearns entered in this action on the 25th day of June, 1999, Glendora, and is dated Bastille Day, July the 14th, 1999, Anno Domini. And we sent it with Bob Hope. Okay, so that's done. What happened to that? Oh, okay, and then the next batch of judges I sue, Stearns will be one of them. And here's more Manister malpractice. If judgment is not signed, return it to the incompetent Manister. Both he and the endorsed are nullities. And copy went to McCloskey, Pinkerton, and Brown. McCloskey is the corrupt CEO of Pinkerton, which is a no good and hasn't been any good ever since Alan Pinkerton back in Abraham Lincoln's days. And Brown is the president. To Parkinson, the clerk of the Southern District of New York. Manister doesn't know that. He thinks the clerk of the Southern District of New York is Heinemann, and Heinemann is the clerk of the Eastern District of New York. I have never seen such a muddled lawyer. Nevins, Esposito, Walsh, and Weber, who are Pinkertons at the federal courthouse in White Plains, who took Glendora's recorder, or Walsh did, and tossed it into the air, and then lied that he dropped it, just like Pinkerton Bruiser Ken. Okay? He beats up poor Franklin, sprawls him on the floor, gives me 6 bruises, drops me on the floor, and then he says, we assaulted them. That's how bad they are. And that's what you're paying for every April 15th. So get out there and stop it. They are, no country is stronger than its courts. So you and I have to clear the courts out of these punks. And I told you about Manister saying the clerk of the Southern District was Heinemann when it's Parkinson, and he can't spell Parkinson. Parkinson doesn't have a second N in it. And then he lies about the certification of service. He did not send it on Glendora. If he had sent it to Glendora with the last name, Glendora would have refused it. And here's a dupe of Manister's dupe, and another dupe of Manister's dupe. Here are the Bruiser Ken logs. We are whisking through July of 1999. Ooh, an orange log. And Mac's an orange outfit today. And this is, oh yes, Matsumoto was the one who gave Franklin a satisfaction of judgment because the crooked U.S. attorney in the crooked Eastern District of New York stole $2,000 from him, $2,050 from Franklin. And mine had to be paid in installments, 12 installments they have paid. Member Matsumoto filed up my satisfaction of judgment, but she didn't waste any time this time. She got it to me. Encloses a certified copy of the satisfaction of judgment in the above reference case. I am going to make a motion to Azrak, who is a teacher's helper in the Eastern District of New York and who filed up the trial and knew very well that she misrepresented and knew the whole thing was a lie. She knew it. I'm going to make a motion to her to dispense with this probation. It doesn't serve any purpose. It serves no legitimate purpose. It doesn't even serve their illegal purposes. And there's a few more months on it. I think it's over in April of the year 2000. So that's just taxpayer waste, and I will make a motion to her, but I don't have time to do it now. But it's certainly on my to-do list. Now, let's see. Does this pertain to you, the Eastern District of New York? This is from the... No, this is sweet. This pertains to the Southern District of New York and the District of Massachusetts. So we have more Bruiser Ken logs coming to the end of July, folks. Here is a legal paper. It's another cheat suite. Robert W. Sweet is a United States District Judge in the Southern District of New York. Of course, what would you expect of him? He's nothing more than a U.S. attorney. You know how the progression goes? If you're a good U.S. attorney, you know, if you lie enough, if you steal enough, if you misrepresent enough, if you fake enough, if you're phony enough, they will make you a United States District Judge. And so many of the judges, I don't have an exact count, but when I look through the judge directory, I put the number down at the bottom of the page. There might be 3 judges listed on the page. 2 of them were former U.S. attorneys. So if you lie enough and are crooked enough, a U.S. attorney will be made a judge because the devil owns them. The devil takes care of all that for them. Here is a leave to appeal for Nickerson. You know, not only did he offend God in one way, but he did in the second way on Glendora versus Bruiser Ken and Buell versus Mildworm. Not only did Nickerson offend God on that, but he's got to come up with a second offense, and that's on Glendora versus Joseph Conway, which is a lawsuit against the civil RICO that is operating within the Eastern District of New York, your district. You know what RICO stands for, right? Racketeer Influence Crime Organization. It has an enterprise, okay? And it has extortion, all right? And then it has the people who operate the enterprise. And in this particular case, who was it? It was Kwiatkowski, okay? It was Ramos. It was Bruiser Ken. It was Patrick Quinn. It was Larry Parker. It was McCloskey Pinkerton. It was Brown Pinkerton. It was, well, it was Azrak and Goh and Ross and Nickerson. There's about 52 of these particeps criminis in this civil RICO. Civil RICO is Title 18 U.S. Code 1963. And this was my notice or motion to the U.S. Court of Appeals, the Second Circuit, for leave to file an appeal, which is another ripoff. Winter took away my, and he took it away, he thinks he took it away, my right to appeal. Well, nobody can take that away from me. And so it was just First Amendment retaliation, because Winter is a crook, and I told you he was a crook. Or rather, I told the Southern District, I guess. And so, Glendora sends out notice of relief that Glendora has won all of the relief she sought in the Robert W. Sweet Sheet number 7. So as I say, that's the District Court, Southern District of New York, not the Eastern District of New York. Here's my letter to Charles Schumer. I'm pretty sure I read that to you. Fellow court reformer Gene Crescenzi sent me a copy of your letter mentioning your action to impeach 18 federal judges. Hooray, applause, applause, I cheer you on. On television today, Glendora mentions your action with vibrant enthusiasm and endorsement. What are the names of the 18? Glendora has the names of more United States district judges who defy Congress's statutes, who think they are above the law, who cheat, lie, and defy in broad daylight. They think Article 3 of the Constitution of the United States means they're appointed for life. Well, nay, they are appointed only for good behavior. Glendora supports you in every way. Tell her more and what she can do to help. She has a huge network of judge watchers. By the way, on the internet, watch, or look up, Judge Watch. Judge Watch on the internet. Following are the names of some of the worst 28 United States Code, Section 1983, 1985, 144, 455, and 372C1, which I just mentioned to you earlier, 1915 inter alia offenders. Glendora's informer paupers and pro se. Never hire a lawyer. Never hire a lawyer. That's just another problem. You go to the library, and you folks in Nassau, you go to your Supreme Court library, 1 Supreme Court Drive in Eola. It's a state law, state of New York, that a Supreme Court has to have a law library. And yet, of course, it's your library, but you're paying for it. Now in Suffolk, I imagine it's the same thing in Central Islip, is it? Because it's certainly true in Westchester. We have to have, every Supreme Court in the state of New York, by law, is mandated to have a law library, and it's yours to use. And don't go to the law school because they're cheap, because after all, their business is to train cheap lawyers. That's their business. Teach them to lie and deceive. So don't go to a law school. Go to your Supreme Court library. But even your public library should have the New York statutes. And they're very, well, they'll certainly have a U.S. code. Okay, where were we? Glendora's informa pauperis and pro se. Be pro se. Latin for yourself. And why am I informa pauperis? I spent all of my money fighting these crooks. But that's all right. I was thinking, people like Lori Galgano, they should be proud of themselves because they've been selected. They've been selected by God. God wants his change. And they have been selected. Think how well qualified they must be. Because there's quite a few people to select from. So I think that's very good. Glendora has personal knowledge of the unreasonable and treasonable machinations of these hollow black ropes of these hollow black ropes. So he reports them on TV on 14 cable systems in Manhattan, Long Island, Westchester, and Rockland. And here they are. Want to hear the great list? Eugene H. Nickerson, Aline R. Ross, Charles P. Sifton, Charles L. Bryant, Barbara S. Jones, Robert W. Sweet, Harold Baer Jr., Jed S. Rakoff, Rip-Off Rakoff, no good wood. Barrington D. Parker, Alan G. Schwartz, William C. Connor, Richard C. Casey, Colleen McMahon, Thomas P. Griesa, Vincent F. Broderick, now deceased, Ralph K. Winter, Guido Galabrisi, Amalia L. Kurst, John O. Newman, Joseph M. McLaughlin, Denise L. Coate, Shira Scheinlin, Sonia Sotomayor, John M. Walker Jr., Pierre N. Laval, Dennis Jacobs. These are all judges that I would like to see. Senator Charles Schumer on the Judiciary Committee. I would like to see him impeach these judges. Jose A. Cabranes, James Oakes. Oaks have little nuts, right? Thomas Meskel, Norma H. Johnson, Merrick B. Garland, Gladys Kessler, James Robertson, Aubrey E. Robinson Jr., Harry T. Edwards, Patricia M. Wall, Douglas H. Ginsburg. This is all the U.S. Court of Appeals, District of Columbia Circuit. David B. Santelli, Judith W. Rogers, Peter K. Leisure, Constance Baker Motley, Milton Pollock, Edward R. Corman, Nina Gershon, George A. O'Toole Jr., Richard E. Stearns, Mary Ann Trump Berry. She happens to be in the District of New Jersey, and another washout. And then for magistrates, Mark D. Fox, Lisa Margaret Smith, Joan M. Azrak, Robert M. Levy, Stephen M. Gold, and Marilyn D. Gold. The treason of each of these is fully documented and in the Glendora Pro Se Public Access TV Museum. Under penalty of perjury, Glendora has told you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help her God. These judges never have. Dated White Plains, New York, July 14th, Bastille Day, 1999, Anno Domini. And it cost $4.53 to write this to Schumer, and it took 4 hours. Here's another legal paper. Let's see if it's yours. This is such an interesting story, but it doesn't belong in your district. But it is so interesting. Okay, Bruiser Ken logs. You ought to move to the Southern District of New York so you can hear these interesting stories that happen. Don't. Now, let's go to volume 62, the last volume. Let's check on the clock. Oh, I checked on the clock. It's 29 minutes. We've got to be out of here in 30 seconds. So next week, I'll resume with the last volume of Bruiser Ken, but there's a big action going on against Nickerson in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Pennsylvania. So I got to read you that paper. But I do want to get back to the Cablevision proxy statement so you can see how these billionaires are ripping you off. Keep the courage flaming. Bye-bye. and in White Plains. The other editions you don't get to see. There's a Manhattan, Long Island edition and a Westchester, Rockland edition. And you don't get to see that because you let John C. Malone rob you of public access, system-wide. Now, oh yes, jokes. My advice is good. It lasts for a lifetime. Nobody ever comes back for more. And the judge has only one fault. He's unbearable. And why do you call it take-home pay? Why do you call it take-home pay? Because you're too embarrassed to take it anywhere else. And the judge, a year ago, was miserable and depressed, but in 1 year, the judge has turned that all around. He's depressed and miserable. And somebody asked Dolly, what do you think of Red China? And Dolly says, it's okay if it doesn't clash with the tablecloth. And Paranoids Anonymous, Rachel wanted to go to Paranoids Anonymous, but they wouldn't tell her where they held the meetings. Volume 17 of Glendora versus Porzio. Porzio is a greedy, retaliatory landlord who committed perjury and caused Caesar Eurythia to commit perjury. That's called suborn perjury. And it was an action that he brought against us, and he thought he'd won it, but the dumb lawyers that he had, Gudeman and Lehrman, did not have the dumb order of Rosanna Washington entered. And in New York State, if you don't enter an order in 60 days, it's abandoned. So they won nothing. It's as if it were never brought. And now, we were reading you last week. Oh, and then what happened? Well, then Porzio stole half of the security deposit, and Glendora brought an action against Porzio in the Supreme Court of the state of New York. And I believe it ended up in Cowie's hands, and Cowie, as usual, flunked. And then it went over to Rudolph, and that's where it is, where I'm reading it to you now. And I am reading Glendora's complaint against Rudolph, and we just got started on that last week, and somebody ought to call up Rudolph and tell him that he's being exposed on TV. Rudolph, imposing stringency that an IFP cannot meet robs the same of the right to appeal and hence denies due process, Fifth Amendment. Defendants violate plaintiff's 14th Amendment right to equal protection of the law. And do you remember who these defendants were? Kenneth W. Rudolph, a so-called Supreme Court Justice, County of Westchester, Raymond P. Farrelly, his law clerk, James R. Cowie, Colleen Kellman, Cowie's law clerk, Richard Lombardo, a dishonest and dishonorable assistant attorney general, state of New York. All assistant attorney generals I have met are dishonest and dishonorable, and Elena and Doris Sassower will confirm that in their experience. Joseph J. Ponio, the local rent administrator in White Plains, and he's gone bye-bye, as he should. Joseph B. Lynch, the acting director of the New York State Division of Housing and Community Renewal. George E. Pataki, John S. Porzio, Friedrich Lehrman and Mark A. Gudeman, liar for hire. Stephen Cohen, who's supposed to enforce the harassment law, and it's a felony, not a misdemeanor, for a landlord to harass a tenant to move. Louis C. Palella, Andrew J. DiPaolo, and Howard C. Levitt of the appellate term of the so-called New York State Supreme Court. Gerald Stern, head of the do-nothing of the Commission on Judicial Conduct. He does nothing to protect you from bad judges, and that's his job. You have a New York State constitutional right to that. Lee Kai Clear, hack that works for him, and another hack, Albert B. Lawrence. and the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct. They are the defendants. And defendants violate plaintiff's 14th Amendment right to equal protection of the law. And this court will not grant a plaintiff four-person relief. Here the appellate term is part of the same court that has granted Glendora We all know that court reporters is a dying industry, and it's been a rip-off for years, an out-and-out rip-off, a scam and a scandal. So I'm glad they're dying, as it should be, greedily ripping off people for years at $5 to $6 a page for pages half empty. Mr. Papillo is protecting self-interest by compelling people to pay for minutes and forcing people to abandon appeals. Glendora did not get substantial justice, but Glendora is prohibited from appealing the injustices because she cannot afford the minutes, and the appellate term, for selfish reasons, is obdurately blocking her. We should have sued Mr. Papillo. Judges will do anything clerks ask them to do. Judges have the say, but clerks have the sway. Judges are too dependent upon clerks who do judges' work for them. So the decision was made by Papillo. Papillo and DiPaolo struck Glendora $1,500 for minutes in 1992 and never read them. This was the start of Glendora's becoming a poor person, an informer pauperous. More greedy court stenographers pushed Glendora the rest of the way downhill to the bottom. And by their own admission, Glendora's motion was unopposed. Glendora had ample material to appeal as a matter of law. The minutes are nothing but a racket. They rob people of justice. Judges don't read them anyhow. Why are courts so crooked? On TV, Glendora sums it up with the graphics. Courts where the elite meet to cheat. Glendora's affidavit to her motion tells it all. Glendora is guaranteed that this state shall give her a republic. And there is the law for that. Oh. I hate that microphone. And by their own admission, Glendora's motion was unopposed. Glendora had ample material to appeal as a matter of law. The minutes are nothing but a racket. They rob people of justice. Judges don't read them anyway. And why are courts so crooked? On TV, Glendora sums it up with the graphic, courts where the elite meet to cheat. Glendora's affidavit to her motion tells it all. Glendora is guaranteed that this state should give her a republic. Okay, now microphone, behave. Glendora cannot appeal this autocratic order to the New York State Court of Appeals. They, in their election, they simply write that they have no jurisdiction when they do, and it takes them 10 weeks to do that. Glendora cannot petition the United States Supreme Court because they ignore again her petitions for writ of certiorari, and they make Glendora pay $300. Well, they try to make her. She can't. And so there is more. Police state. This action is brought under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983, violation of civil rights by state actors, anybody who works for the government, and Section 1985, conspiracy, and that's what it is. The enclosed is really not an order. It is a bogus. It is not signed by a judge, let alone 3 judges. Glendora has a right to an order signed by a judge. Now, Glendora's case cannot be dismissed because, in view of the well-settled rule particularly applicable on pro se civil rights actions, that a complaint should not be dismissed unless it appears beyond doubt that the plaintiff can prove no set of facts in support of her claim which would entitle her to relief. Branham versus Clark and Conley versus Gibson. Governor Pataki, Glendora gives you until July 31st, 1998, Anno Domini, to correct Gerald Stern's dereliction and incompetence. Over 30 complaints have been sloughed off with these form letters. If no cure, Glendora sues Stern, Keichler, and Lawrence, the Commission on Judicial Conduct, and you, in the United States District Court, District of Columbia, under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983, violation of civil rights, under color of state, and Section 1985, conspiracy. Glendora's TV show is seen in your hometown, Peekskill, and on 14 other cable systems in Metro New York. There could be no more crooked judges than Rosanna Washington and Joanne Freer. She could be expelled immediately. Gerald Stern and his gang are a taxpayer waste. They are worse than judges Glendora exposes. The state constitution guarantees Glendora an operative commission on judicial conduct. When are you going to get us one? For expressing the truth about Stern and his hoodlums, Stern sent the New York State Police after us. This is in violation of the Bill of Rights of the New York State Constitution. And here we have victims of courts in the courts, victims of corruption in the courts, and whenever a party to any proceeding in a district court makes and files a timely and sufficient affidavit that the judge before whom the matter is pending has a personal bias or prejudice either against him or in favor of any adverse party, such judge shall proceed no further therein, but another judge shall be assigned to hear such proceeding. Whenever in any matter within the jurisdiction of any department or agency of the United States knowingly and willfully retaliates, conceals, that's not retaliates, it's falsifies, conceals or covers up by any trick, scheme, or device a material fact, or makes any false instruments or fraudulent statements or representations, and so forth, etc. And this is what Cowie did, this is what Rudolph did, this is what Kellner did, and this is what Farrelly did. The Constitution of the United States guarantees to the states a Republican form of government. Well, what we have is a police state. We don't have a Republican form of government. Quotes from the Constitution of the United States, of the state of New York. That's the Bill of Rights, Article 1. You must make yourself a copy of that. Richard Lombardo is sued for lying to a judge, for being a New York State taxpayer waste, for fraud upon the court, and for violating Glendora's federal and state constitutional rights under color of state, 42 U.S. Code, Section 1983 and 1985. Rudolph and Farrelly deliberately ignored the fact that Glendora had won all the relief she sought due to Judge Cowie's failure to follow the 60-day rule for a motion. Memorandum from Glendora thanking Justice James R. Cowie for giving her all of the relief she sought in this action. And I'm not going to read that to you because in a nutshell it's because it's a state law that a judge has to rule on a motion within 60 days of its being submitted. And no immunity. Nobody is immune under Title 42 U.S. Code, Section 1983, Civil Rights under color of state. This is the great anti-postbellum victory of 1873. Judges are not immune. Nobody who violates civil rights under color of state is immune. No person, it says. There is no law that gives these violators immunity. Glendora has written a 40-page document on this. These defendants have no monetary immunity, no injunctive immunity, no declaratory immunity. Glendora demands all three. Nobody is immune from violating civil rights under color of state. Under color of state simply means somebody who works for a government, any government. There is no law that gives these defendants immunity, and bad decisions by bad judges will not suffice. Congress has made no law giving these defendants immunity. Wherefore, plaintiff seeks $23 million, damages, compensatory and punitive. Judges learn to enforce the law, and lawyers learn to live by the law. The costs of this action, injunctive and declaratory relief, and any further relief, just and proper, dated White Plains, New York, October 8, 1998, Anno Domini, yours in truth, $14 and 8 hours. And then come all of the exhibits, and you and I have been through the exhibits. That's the complaint against Rudolph. who is supposedly a Supreme Court justice. Now here's a dumb paper from Lehrman and Guterman. This should show you how nescient they are. There is no index number, there is no case, Porzio versus Buell. It was abandoned. The order was not entered in 90 days. Oh, it's 90 days. Of February 20th, 1998. There is no court indicated. What court is intended? None. Bad people. Okay, moving on here. True. Glendora versus Porzio, Freya, Washington, Rosanna Washington, Lehrman, Guterman. And here is the address list of the defendants, of the people I just read you that were sued in the United States District Court, District of Columbia. Here's the notice entry of the order. And John S. Porzio, Friedrich M. Lehrman, Mark A. Guterman, 199 Main Street, White Plains, New York, 10601. Porzio is at 2 Old Mamaroneck Road. Please take notice that you have been served a notice of entry of the order attached herewith. Said order entered by the clerk on October the 9th, 1998. And this is a very interesting case. This is a case where cheap, sleazy, Porzio, Lehrman, and Guterman asked the court for $17,000 attorney's fees. And the court said, upon the foregoing papers, the court finds and declares as follows. Petitioner moves this court for an order awarding legal fees in favor of petitioner and against respondents in the sum of $16,909 pursuant to subdivision 20A5 of the original lease agreement. A party's claim for attorney's fee is a separate and distinct cause of action. And then a lot of gobbledygook. These sites are nothing but... Well, let's go on. The court, having reviewed the file and submissions and exhibits in connection with the instant motion, finds that this court lacks subject matter jurisdiction to grant the relief requested in petitioner's moving papers. While the city court may render judgment for rent due without regard to amount, Uniform City Court Act, Section 204, no such statutory authority exists regarding an award of attorney's fees in connection with a summary proceeding. Furthermore, the amount requested for legal fees exceeds the monetary jurisdiction of the court. Uniform City Court Act, Section 202. Accordingly, petitioner's motion is denied. The decision constitutes the order of the court. This time she got smart and she entered the order herself. Isn't this something when you catch a judge, 2 judges, a court stenographer, a bunch of clerks, 2 crooked lawyers, and a greedy landlord? You catch them. They don't know the law, and they're caught being crooked, and they're caught cheating. Notice, Glendora has won all of the relief on her motion for sanctions served on this court, Porzio, Lehrman, and Guterman, November 30th, 1998. By CPLR 2219, a motion has to be decided within 60 days, and this is the law. And the motion was not decided within 60 days. Now, this is an order from Rudolph. We covered that, and that's the one that he's being sued for. And a memorandum by Glendora about Rudolph. Rudolph ruins and runs. Are you Rudolph? Are you ruins? Are you run? This is worth your time. Here is the insane order he wrote, serving himself. You know what his motive was? He wants Pataki to appoint him to the Appellate Division, Court of Appeals, Supreme Court, State of New York. And so naturally he's going to free Pataki to get that signature. This Rudolph Farrelly paper is a great American document. It shows crooked lawyers, corrupt judges, and arrogant law clerks that America has had enough. We will stand up to them. We have rights, and we have no intention of their trampling them. Quote, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. They do not. In 1992, 3 and 4, Glendora used to take this abuse from the useless taxpayer fraud called the Supreme Court, State of New York, County of Westchester. Now, she knows better. At minimum, the public has 4 recourses to law-breaking defendants like Panio, Patacchio, Lynch, Lombardo, Porzio, Lehrman, and Guterman. A, sue them. B, expose them on TV, happening right now. E, picket them. F, impeach, recall, that is, get them fired. Also, we can pray for them, forgive them, God, for they know not what they do. All that's left is Shapiro, Bellantoni, Scarpino, LaCava. We have a right to equal protection of the law. They have a job to do. Enforce it. That's the 14th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. We have a right to due process. That's the 5th Amendment. We are protected by civil rights under Colorado State, Title 42, U.S. Code, Sections 1990, 83, and 85. This was the great antebellum victory of citizens over judges. We won, and judges lost. They have no immunity, they have no law, they are immune, and all they have is what they call case law. This is bad decision by bad judges. Judges don't make the laws, that's the job of the legislature. Remember, we still have 3 branches of government, executive, legislative, and judicial. It is not the province of judges to make law. Six, 666. Well, now. Let them know, Americans, they just plainly are not going to get away with it any longer. The gig is up. Glendora asked a fellow church congregant last Sunday, who's running for judges? And he says, it makes no difference. They're all crooks. And this is somebody who works for the County of Westchester. Some of them are gangsters. Now, it was philosophic for Glendora to hear somebody else say what Glendora has been saying for years. Regarde, s'il vous plaît, the New York State Constitution, Article 1, Bill of Rights, Section 8, any citizen may freely express his sentiments without fear of reprisal. The courts of law are where the elite meet to cheat. Patriots versus traitors, saints versus sinners. You've heard of white-collar crime? Well, this is black robe crime. So state the graphics full screen on TV. We have had enough. The public is fed up. Rudolph, that's Kenneth Rudolph, wants the 2nd Department Appellate Division, certainly the crookedest bench we have. Lazy, expensive, valueless, 1.5 years. Pataki makes the appointment. So Rudolph summarily, in a lie, with no personal knowledge, dismisses Glendora's action against Pataki. Rudolph left out defendants Porzio and Lehrman. Robinson is unilateral throughout. He tells only what Rudolph said and not what Glendora's refutation of the same is. And these causes of action are of national concern. Every Robinson order is just more court collusion, buddyism, and America can go fly. It's not a court, it's a correspondence school. So far, Porzio has cost, with his lying, stealing, and cheating, $3,819.18 print, post, and travel, 1,596.25 hours, times $250 an hour is $399,062.50 in legal labor, 4,942 pages, 15 volumes, 2 file drawers, 49 TV reports, including November 12, 1998, 805 lies, and December the 18th, 96 to November the 6th, 98, 1 year, 10 months, 3 weeks of tradership to the Empire State and the USA by Porzio, Lehrman Gudeman, Joanne Freer, and Rosanna Washington. Now, that is a beautiful case. That's a great American document, a great American fight to the United States District Court, District of Columbia. And this foolish Aubrey E. Robinson, Jr., a United States District Judge down there, senile like Sweet and Bryant, dismisses the case. And on November the 6th, 1998, Glendora hereby appeals to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit the memorandum and transfer order of Aubrey E. Robinson, Jr. The idiot transferred it to the Southern District of New York, where all of Ruta's friends are. And then, of course, they are. The transfer was not in the interest of justice. The transfer has to be in the interest of justice. Clearly, it was not. And it fell into the hands of T.P. Griesa, and T.P. Griesa dismissed it with lies. So that clearly shows that the transfer was not in the interest of justice. And it clearly shows that you have a rotten court in D.C., and you have a rotten court in the Southern District of New York, and you have a rotten court in Westchester County, so-called Supreme Court. So Glendora appeals that. We're still on volume 17 with 18, 19, 20, and 21 to go. These are dupes. And Glendora's memorandum and refutation of incompetent Robinson dismissal of Halloween week on Glendora versus Kenneth W. Rudolph, Forelli, Cowie, Kelman, Lombardo, Porzio, Panio, Lynch, Pataki, Lehrman, Gudeman, Cohen, Stephen Cohen, Palella, DePaulo, Levitt. Next week we will resume there with the refutation of the senseless and baseless transfer by Aubrey Robinson from the United States District Court in the District of Columbia to the United States District Court, Southern District of New York. Bad, bad, bad. I ought to put this list of bad judges on the internet. Lincoln. The 1980 have body work done on these rocker panel extensions. Had rotted away. Uncle Louis, John Idice's uncle, had made these extensions by hand several years ago, and of course the salt got to them. cheat suite. And oh yes, Stephen Juris, I ought to play you that conversation. He's the new law clerk who will be there a year, first job out of college, and Sweet is corrupting him. And I called up and asked him, did he write that order? I'll tell you what order, I mean just a second. And it was very easy to conclude from his answer that he did. And then he gives the old wheeze and lie. See, they teach them to lie. That any order is written by the court. Not at all. They are all ghost-written by little, tiny, first job law graduates. So that's juris, similar to jurat. No, folks, I have gone through the Bruiser Ken Pinkerton file, and there aren't any new papers on the Sweet sheet. Victor was telling me that about the reports on Sweet that are on TV. These reports are also on in Manhattan. They're in Westchester, Rockland, and in Manhattan. So Sweet Cheat stands about where it was last week when I brought you the update. Now I'm going to move on to the Media Studies Journal, which is a thing put out by Gannett, and as I've told you before, you cannot believe a thing that Gannett says or writes. It's about the courts and the coverage of the courts by the press. The judges don't like the way the press covers the courts. Of course, the judges don't want anybody to know the bad things they do. This is a particularly interesting chapter. It's called Justice by the Consent of the Governed. And federal judges on reciprocity between the press and the judiciary and the prospects for cameras in the federal courts. Well, they won't allow cameras in the federal courts because they don't want you, the public, to see how bad the judges are and see how bad the system is and see how they murder Madam Justice. And you have a First Amendment right to know what's going on in the courts. What did it just say? Justice by the consent of the governed. You are the governed, and you are also the payee. The cameras actually showing the trial were a good thing. If the trial was not handled correctly, and I hesitate to say that because I wasn't in the judge's Ito's place, this is the O.J. Simpson trial, then the public should know that and should have a chance to form their own views on how trials could be better handled. Very, very good. These quotes I'm giving you now are from a United States District Judge named Richard S. Arnold and another United States District Judge named Gilbert S. Merritt. That would be the only judge I ever went before that dealt with the merits. Judge Richard S. Arnold is Chief Judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit. Judge Gilbert S. Merritt of the United States Court of Appeals for the 6th Circuit was Chief Judge from 1989 through 1996. Throughout their careers, they have been concerned with the relationship between the news media and the administration of justice. John Seigenthaler, who wrote this article, and Robert W. Snyder with him, interviewed them for Media Studies Journal. Let's see, courts. Thinking somewhat pragmatically, we in the federal courts, in order to have cameras in the courts serving a purpose, like Richard says, that's a grammatical error, it should be as Richard says. Like is a preposition, it is not a conjunction, it does not connect independent and dependent clauses. A purpose, like Richard says, have got to do two things. First, the Supreme Court has to agree to have cameras, and I definitely think that they should do that. If there's any institution that could be of educational value, it would be the Supreme Court. It's gotten along well for 200 years, so there's an argument for history. Then there is an argument that they don't want to become celebrities, that's the Supreme Court justices, that it will change the institution if they allow cameras and become entertainers. Well, they certainly should change the institution of the Supreme Court of the United States. They do a lousy job. And they don't want you to find that out. But I'm here to tell you that they do a terrible job. They betray America left and right. They don't like poor people. They won't let poor people file a petition for writ of certiorari. And then they do about 2% of the cases that come before them. The Supreme Court of the United States does a terrible job, and they don't want you to know it, and that's why they don't have cameras in the Supreme Court. And they give you all these lies and excuses. Why not? Would either of you be more in favor of a C-SPAN type coverage of the federal courts, which was gavel to gavel, at least in the initial coverage? Judge Arnold: well, it would be wonderful if anybody could do it. There is court TV, which unhappily I don't get where I live. That's because of the cable operator. But gavel to gavel coverage is a wonderful thing. I love C-SPAN. I love to watch Congress, both houses of the Australian Parliament, for that matter. The most interest would be, of course, in the Supreme Court. That would be a marvelous thing for the people of the country. And people would watch this. They would love it. They would be, in my opinion, greatly impressed with the seriousness and the conscientiousness with which that court operates. Well, I disagree with the judge on that. I think the judge has an axe to grind. If any of his decisions ever go before the Supreme Court, he wants their endorsement. He doesn't want to upset the Supreme Court. Okie dokie. Judge Merritt: I agree entirely. The coverage of court is very poor as a general proposition, except at one level, and that is the print press coverage of the Supreme Court in certain newspapers where there are reporters who cover that institution as a beat. Of course, he's talking about the New York Times. In order to cover an institution like the courts, you not only have to have a basic knowledge of what court it is you are covering and where it fits in the scheme of the judiciary, but you should have, like every educated citizen, some fundamental concepts about federalism, civil liberties, and how the Bill of Rights fits with the rest of the Constitution. And the judges violate all of those things. The judges violate the Constitution left and right. I got another case here today to tell you about, of a violative judge named Anita B. Brody in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. Violates civil rights left and right. Only self-interest. I have not met a United States District Judge who did anything other than self-interest. They decided what the public is interested in, the press, not what they should know about, but what they are curious about. And the court system and court processes are not among these things. What is among those things is the particular sensational case, which is still fairly well covered, that court processes, how the government works, is not one of those things. Well, you can say for a chat with Glendora that it has shown you clearly how the anti-government works. I will not call these people presently in the courts government. I will not call them that. They are anti-government. We need to get these people out, and we need to get good people in. The judiciary and the press both go astray because of the pressures of the moment. I think that's the first time I've ever been asked that question, and I said yes. I later learned that I should have charged her a $15 fee. This woman asked for an audio tape of the trial, or of the conference, or whatever it was. In the federal courts, the courtroom deputy in magistrates' courts is supposed to record it on audio tape, and then you're supposed to be able to go down to the clerk afterwards and buy a copy for $15. With United States district judges, that isn't so. And then you get into the thing of the rip-off of minutes, court stenographers' minutes. We have to do away with court stenographers entirely. First of all, an audio tape is a more true record. And you get ripped off for $5, $6 a page for a page that's half empty. Judge Arnold, none of them are very good. Now there's another grammatical error. That should have been none of them is very good. None is an indefinite pronoun and is singular. Some of them say things that are unbelievable. Of course, you're talking about TV. I watch TV a lot, and I yell at the TV set a lot, but I only do it at home, so no one knows exactly who it is that I'm yelling at. It should be whom it is. No, I guess that's right, who it is. But some of those, these pundits, the pontificators, lawyers, who voice legal opinions on television are astounding. That's just a subjective reaction. There's a fellow named Jack Ford. That's President Ford's son. I wonder if this judge is Judge Arnold is a Republican. There's a fellow named Jack Ford on NBC who I think is pretty good, but some of them are unnecessarily confrontational. Some of these programs get a defense lawyer and a prosecutor together, and they yell at each other, say outrageous things. I don't think that contributes to the sum total of public good. Well, that's true. What are they talking about now? The Oklahoma City trial about sensitive matters. There is a much greater tendency on the part of the judges today to put things under seal and to prevent the press from going about sensitive matters that there was 20 years ago. You see, that's the increasing 1984, George Orwell, you know, Big Brother, and that's the thing, is that that public should be yours. It should go to you, the public. That record, rather, should go to you, the public. It shouldn't be put under seal. And when the judge does that, he's covering up something bad that he's done that he doesn't want you to know about. I think that the press needs to have better standards and take into account the interests of the system of justice in our society, in addition to just the momentary interest in getting it out to the public to beat some competition. Well, he's certainly right about that. They're both bad, the courts and the press. And as I told you last week, the reason the press doesn't come out and say what I just said to you is the reason you don't have cameras in the courtroom is that the judges are so bad and they don't want you, the public, to know how bad they are. The reason the press doesn't come out and say that is that the press has an axe to grind, which axe is, if they're sued for libel, they want a decision in favor of themselves, so they don't aggravate the judges. I always say when I go to court that my case is going to be adjudicated on its merits. Well, it never has, but that's the way it should be. And I tell the judge exactly what I'm thinking and what I've seen and what I've observed, and therefore the judge, in a pitiful wallow of self-interest, rules against the United States of America, the Constitution, and the laws. Okay, I think that's enough of that. This Judge Arnold said, I used to be a newspaper reporter. I started out with a summer job reading proof and then writing obits and then covering city government. And so maybe that contributes to my attitude. That sounds just like the career of Franklin Buell, who was a newspaper reporter for something like 37 years, 10 years on the Springfield, Massachusetts Union, and 27 years on the Buffalo News. Judges are every bit as much involved in dealing with the press as the press is in dealing with judges. And so we're going to quit on this article and go on to the next one. And that's Robert Chambers is taken into custody in the slaying of Jennifer Levin in 1986. I'm really not going to get into that. It's terrible what people do with a God-given life. Okay, we're coming close to the end of feeding the ravenous appetite of the press. Well, that's true, and television has certainly accelerated that. Television with its 24-hour news coverage. A defense attorney and law professor argues that reporting privileged information before it appears in court undermines the fairness of trials. Well, it does. And I don't see anything else here to talk to you about on these pages. The role of the media in exposing crimes against humanity. That's war crimes, international courts. Cast a cautious eye on the Supreme Court. Indeed I will. This article makes a very good point. This case is very often cited of Clarence Earl Gideon, and he was pro se, and his case went to the Supreme Court, and he got the decision in his favor. And the decision was that states must provide counsel free of charge to any indigent felony defendant. And so the Supreme Court upheld that. And everybody thought, oh, it's a wonderful Supreme Court, and it supports America, and it supports poor people. I know that, I have personal knowledge that that's not true. And, but as this article points out, the pressure was on the Supreme Court. They were getting bad press, and people didn't like what they did, and so they very handily came out with this decision in favor of Gideon to give him free counsel so as to get the public in favor of the Supreme Court. Here's a picture of Thurgood Marshall. Marshall ruled against taking away an informed populace, a poor person's right to file a petition for writ of certiorari. And he ruled against it, and so did, wrote against it, and so did Stevens, and so did Brennan. Woodard and Armstrong subjected the court to unprecedented scrutiny. Well, they need to be subjected to scrutiny. Clarence Thomas and photographers before his Supreme Court confirmation hearings, and they had every reason not to appoint him. And that's the end. Media Studies Journal, covering the courts. You don't get the truth, folks. I don't know how much time you have, but you ought to go to court yourself. And you'll see one violation of justice, of the Constitution, of Americanism, one after another, just stacked right up. Go to the court yourself. You're just going to the court makes the judge act better, because he knows he's being watched by you. We have to put up a character generator that says Pax Vobiscum. And in church Sunday, the Psalm 8 was being read, and it said, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars, which you have established, and that's true, when you look at all those beautiful things that God has done. And then the psalmist asks, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, and mortals that you care for them? Yet you have made them little less than God. Well, I take exception to that. That's what you call anthropomorphism, attributing to God human qualities and human traits. I say that human beings are a whole lot less than God. I have to tell you, recount to you a case about two United States probation officers in a lawsuit that I brought against one of the worst judges we have, United States District Judge Charles L. Bryant, who lives in Ossining, and he's in the United States District Court, White Plains. When I sued him for his atrocious litigation abuse and self-interest and lying and misrepresentation and violation of civil rights, I also sued his law clerk. And as I've told you about law clerks, they're just kids out of law school. They go to a judge. It's their first job. The law clerk, 1,000 kids might apply for the job, but the one who gets it is the one whose father knows the judge. And and this name of this law clerk was Tormey, and T-O-R-M-E-Y. And he wrote a particular vicious and virulent and ad hominem decisions, which of course Bryant scribbled his signature on. You see, you don't get any orders of judges that are written by judges. You get them ghostwritten by these law students or law graduates. They have the job for 1 year, and then they're fully corrupted, and they're off into a lucrative stealing law career. And some of them become judges if they're crooked enough and lie enough. So I wanted to send the complaint. I sent the complaint to Tormey in care of Charles O'Brien at the U.S. Courthouse, 300 Quaropa Street in White Plains. The clerk sent back the letter saying that they had no forwarding address, that he was no longer here, that they couldn't forward it. You know right away that's a lie. They have to have a forwarding address. How's he going to get his W-2 form? And so the Bryant staff was lying, and they were lying under the flag of the United States in a United States District Court. The present, one of the people in Bryant's, they call them chambers. There's just nothing but offices, but they call them chambers because that's where the judges sleep. And one of these people who worked for Bryant was named Ken. And Ken said that he had no forwarding address for Tormey. And the letter I showed to Michael McMahon, who's the deputy clerk in White Plains, and I showed it to a few other people, and I believe I showed it to you on TV. And so I was going down the sidewalk on Lexington Street in White Plains. There's the city court is here, the federal court is here, and the county court is here. It's sort of a quadrangle. And I was going by the city court, and I saw Ken come down the street, and he was in the company of a couple of women. And when I got to the sidewalk and I was going into the city court at White Plains, I said, Ken, you know you're lying about Tormey's address. And the consequences are going to be serious. Well, Ken went back, apparently, I would think, and reported that to Bryant. Then Bryant went to the two probation officers named Daniel Sheridan and Mark Mafucci, and they cornered me in their office and tried to make me sign a statement that I would have no more sidewalk confrontations with court personnel. I reserved. I did not sign. I said, I want to think about it. And so after that hour-and-a-half meeting, I did think about it, and of course the answers came in very quickly that my civil rights had been violated. Number one, I have a right to be faced by my accusers. Number two, I have a right to question these accusers. That's what you call depositions and interrogatories and inspections and admissions and things like that. That was speech on a sidewalk. Speech on a sidewalk deserves and gets the utmost protection in the United States of America. Judges don't seem to know this, lawyers don't seem to know this, law clerks don't seem to know this, and even little clerks don't seem to know this, but it does. And so I wrote a massive lawsuit, Glendora versus Daniel J. Sheridan and Mark J. Mafucci, and Charles L. Bryant, and Ken, and all of the other people on Bryant's staff who colluded in this lie about Tormey's address. And I filed that lawsuit in the United States District Court, District of Columbia. Great American document. It was a great fight. And I wish I had time to read you that complaint, because it encapsulates the injustice that goes on within courthouse walls. You build them a $33 million courthouse in the city of White Plains, and this is how they abuse it. They don't do it, they don't use it for justice, they use it for self-interest. And so it wasn't long before I got a notice that the probation had been transferred to Hauppauge. You know where Hauppauge is? Do you know where Great Neck is? Do you know where the Nassau County line is? Well, Hauppauge is at least an hour away, or an hour and a quarter away from the Fogs Neck Bridge. It's that far east, and that's where the probation is today. To be continued. The secretary says that the judge has an even disposition. It's rotten all of the time. There were 12 calls last night only on a chat with Glendora in Long Island, and 949, 9495 must have had a power outage because it doesn't answer. And we're trying very, very hard to get through the Bruiser Ken thing. So the light fell down, and it doesn't look very good right now. Hold still. So public access works. We got rid of Bruiser Ken. This is a great victory. And now what is left to read you, what record is left to read you? We have volume 62. So let us get through that as fast as possible. These are Bruiser Ken logs. I think we're going to go into volume 63. It seems that the volumes are compiled faster than they can be read. This is Glendora Plaintiff Appellant versus Pinkerton et al. Defendants, appellees. This is Glendora has been winterized in the U.S. Court of Appeals. Her right to appeal has been winterized and denied and taken from her by a crooked man called Ralph K. Winter. And Glendora says she has asked for She's appealing Cheat Sweet, Robert W. Sweet, and she has enclosed her. Next story is another sweet cheat, and that's in the United States Court of Appeals for the First Circuit in Boston. I don't know whether to tell you the Texaco story or to tell it to the people in Westchester, Rockland. Now, it'll be Westchester, Rockland, I guess. That's really where it all happened. However, it does concern your Court of Appeals. Here is an amazing thing. This is an article from the New York Post where Volpe says that it was Weiss who was in the bathroom when Volpe sodomized Abner Louima. It wasn't Strauss, and that the wrong man has been convicted. That's an amazing story. Then also in the Post is Volpe's statement, how Abner Louima got Volpe enraged and incensed beyond reason by his attitude toward the police. Now, what is this? This is another second. Well, it's a second. No, it's a First Circuit story, and it's a United States District Court story. And here is a paper that doesn't even belong in Bruiser Ken. This belongs in a story in Westchester. Pause. That great big paper was misfiled. So that makes volume 62 a little thinner. I would like to lose weight that fast. Here's another one that has to come out. Another First Circuit, Second Southern District of New York story. You've got enough bad things happening in your district, the Eastern District of New York. Whisking through volume 62, Bruiser Ken logs. Here is a Bruiser Ken story. This is in the United States District Court, Eastern District of Pennsylvania, Glendora plaintiff versus Eugene H. Nickerson. Law clerk Hillary and law clerk Indira. And Marilyn Dolan Go. Not related to Cablevision. Todd J. Manister, Michael J. Goldberger, Zachary Carter. Then Robert W. Sweet, through Mary Jo White, Alan G. Schwartz, Ralph K. Winter, through Droney, some law clerks and judges in the United States District Court, District of Columbia, and some more in the United States District Court of Massachusetts, Boston Division, and U.S. West, Richard McCormick, told you about those last week. And the White Plains people, the police commissioner who demanded to make out an information form before you picket on the sidewalk, grossly against the First Amendment, and then a bunch of circuit judges, United States District Court, District of Columbia. The movement, and what's the name of this? This is Glendora versus Nickerson for his apostatic and evil and crooked and self-interest order dismissing Glendora versus Bruiser Ken and Buell versus Mildorn. Just letting those hoods and friends of his get away with it. But maybe the Eastern District got tired of Bruiser Ken, and maybe that's why he is out of the Yale courthouse. But anyway, this is a motion to a judge named A.B. Brody. First name is Anita. It's civil action number 99-2777. And it's a notice of cross motion by plaintiff Glendora. 1, to strike the defendant's motion to dismiss because of no notice of motion. 2, to deny motion to dismiss for failure to state a meritorious defense. That's New York State Civil Practice Laws and Rules 3211B. It says that a motion to dismiss can be denied if the defendants present no meritorious defense. 3, to grant Glendora default judgment for failure to appear, or to appear timely, or to defend. And that would be Rule 55, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Or alternatively, to grant Glendora summary judgment as a matter of law. That would be Rule 56, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure. Movant is Glendora. The return date is August 31, 1999. The location is courtroom of Anita B. Brody, U.S. District Judge, Eastern District of Pennsylvania, U.S. Courthouse, 601 Market Street, Philadelphia, New York, Philadelphia, PA, 19106. Relief requested is listed in the cross-motion title, plus all of the relief listed in Glendora's complaint. A legal basis is Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rules 1, 11, 55, and 56. Grounds are listed in the cross-motion title. Services by United States Mail First Class on all defendants at their addresses listed on pages 63, 64. Service was by Glendora on August 26, 1999. That return date is wrong. It should be more like September 10th. Too bad it got behind me. Glendora's case cannot be dismissed. The United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit said so. If you dismiss it, you will go to the United States Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. This is the case Glendora versus Cablevision Systems, the great victory. The first time that a public access clearly took the law to the courts, and the law was tested, and Glendora won. In fact, she won in 2 courts. In the United States District Court, Southern District of New York, Charles Bryant, who was caught cheating, and in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, Donald N. Silverman, that no cable operator can exercise editorial control over public access. Now, I know that that's very easy for you to understand. If a person is speaking in the park, you can't go up and say to him, you can't say that. If a person is picketing on the sidewalk, you can't go up to him and say, you can't say that. This is America, and this is the great legacy of America. But Cablevision did that in its arrogance and its ignorance. And if I sound very sleepy today, it's because I got up at midnight last night, and I wrote an appeal to the United States District Court, Eastern District of Pennsylvania, on this matter here in the Southern District. But this, the Second Circuit ruled, however, in view of the well-settled rule, particularly applicable in pro se civil rights cases, that a complaint should not be dismissed unless it appears beyond doubt that the plaintiff, moi, can prove no set of facts in support of her claim which would entitle her to relief. Branham versus Clark and Conley versus Gibson. So she had no legal basis to dismiss the claim, and in doing so, she violated the Second Circuit. Now, there's a bunch of crooked U.S. attorneys in the Pennsylvania and the Philadelphia Federal Court, and their names are Stiles, Sheehan, and Barnett. And they enclose a blank order, making it as easy as possible for a judge to cheat and just fill in her name and the date. And so they made a motion to dismiss. With prejudice. Okay, you can always be sure it will be with prejudice. They don't like little people. They don't like Americans who fight for rights. And they want a or to transfer it. You see, that's called the old thing of passing the buck, right? Dump it in somebody else's land. And this is the federal defendant's motion to dismiss, first of all, a bunch of punk U.S. attorneys in Philadelphia do not have the standing to represent judges in the Eastern District of New York, judges in the Southern District of New York, judges in the District of Massachusetts, Boston, judges in Washington, D.C. They just don't have the standing to do that. So in essence, all of these bad judges really didn't appear. No return date, and they make a notice of motion, and they violate all of the standard form. These are U.S. attorneys. Typically, they don't know the law. They don't know how to write legal papers. Usually they just write letters. But in this motion, they had no notice of motion. You always have to have a notice of motion. And they had no return date. And for these reasons, Glendora says, by Rule 11, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, it has to be stricken from the record as if it had never been filed. They don't give any no location as to where the motion will be heard. They don't name any assigned judge. I found that out later. That was Anita B. Brody. A notice of motion has to have an assigned Article III judge, and the motion must be stricken. Assistant U.S. attorneys, notoriously nescient, the USA over apparently, get an E-, flunk, and they have no passing grade on that paper. A notice of motion must be made and must state grounds. Stiles, Sheehan, and Barnett, all U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys, state no grounds. Legal basis is given, but no grounds. The motion must be stricken. And the caption is very lazy, and well, not only that, it's illegal. Glendora plaintiff versus Honorable Eugene H. Nickerson. Well, I never called him honorable, because I have never found him to be honorable. And so I put DIS in front of the honorable. And it's just at all. That's a lazy caption. That's captious. And an amendment of law, and in this case it's amendment of lawlessness. Anyway, an amendment of law has to have a blue cover, but these assistant U.S. attorneys don't know that. And they don't name the defendants, and that's the so-called federal defendants who don't really exist. There are only some of the defendants. The rest of the defendants haven't appeared at all. And then they call it factual background, but it isn't, folks. It's all lies. And they're all wrong. They can't even read. So see all those crosses? That's how many errors they made. This is the assistant U.S. attorneys. I guess they're bad the world over. I should say the country over. These Stiles, Sheehan, and Barnett say that Tony Onassis is a clerk to Judge O'Toole. Well, that's absolutely wrong. Tony Onassis is the clerk of court. Dumb U.S. attorneys. All right, so I went through and I refuted their paper, every single paragraph. Let me show you an example of it. And this goes on for 20 pages. So everything, all of their lies are refuted, and I think they've told a total of 64 lies in this paper. And that makes the Bruiser Ken lies go from 32, 73, plus 64 here, and plus another 10 lies by the judge, Brody. So we'll have to add that all up and change the graphic. Now it's up to about 300-400 lies. So this is all refuted right down to the end. And then Glendora says, conclusion, Stiles, Sheehan, and Barnett have no standing. They must be sanctioned pursuant to Rule 11, Federal Rules of Civil Procedure for misrepresentations to the court. They are acting illegally and will be sued for this, along with Jennifer, the class of 2001, Temple University, a freshman. Now they got a ghostwriter. They went out and got a poor little freshman at the Temple University Law School and got her to write the paper and do the research. There is no law anywhere that allows assistant U.S. attorneys in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania to represent judges in the Southern District of New York, the Eastern District of New York, the District of Columbia, and Boston. The case cannot be transferred since A.R. Brody has no jurisdiction over non-appearing defendants. But Brody has jurisdiction to rule default judgment and/or summary judgment. Stiles, Sheehan, and Barnett can be disbarred for violation of American Bar Association, presentation of a criminal case to gain advantage in a civil case. Jennifer can be barred from being barred. Super applies to all four for using papers not for publication. Their practice of the same is heinous and proves mental incompetence, along with their desperation for a defense. Their resort to a ghostwriter, a freshman law student, their Stygian suckering her into it, is implorable youth corruption. Now again, this is Glendora versus Eugene H. Nickerson for violation of due process, for violation of equal protection of the law, for about 20 other violations of Americans' rights. Quote unquote, immunity is a misrepresentation. There is no law to invoke for immunity. See Glendora's 40-page memorandum to the United States District Judge, Eastern District of New York, Eileen R. Ross, on her hoax immunity, quote unquote, ruling. Following this memorandum, Ross stepped down and recused. The case was dumped on senile senior judge Nickerson. Glendora exposed the judge, lie, cheat, immunity, quote unquote, and the law says no person shall be immune. If somebody violates your civil rights, no person, even if they work for the government, can get away with that. That person is liable to you. And this was the great antebellum victory for citizens. For years they debated, aren't judges immune? And judges lost. They are not immune. Nobody's immune under Title 42 U.S. Code, Section 1983, Civil Rights Violations. So I say that was after the Civil War. Our judges included, yes, Stiles, Sheehan, and Barnett and Jennifer must be sanctioned for lying. 97 Civ 1131 EDNY is the Ross case. Nickerson bungled the police brutality trial of Volpe Luima by convicting Schwartz, not Weiss. Weiss, not Schwartz, was in the police bathroom when Volpe sodomized Leumi, the broomstick, and this is alleged by Volpe. This was another lie job by the assistant U.S. attorneys of jury intimidation. See, U.S. attorneys intimidate jurors so that the jurors will rule in favor of the U.S. attorneys because the jurors are afraid they're going to be the next First Amendment retaliation case. Glendora's case cannot be transferred to the Southern District of New York because it happened in the Eastern District of New York, the New Jersey District, I keep leaving out the New Jersey District, the D.C. District, and the Boston District. It cannot be transferred for all the reasons given in Glendora's Rule 60B motion sent out Monday of this week. 8/23/99, Monday. This explains Glendora's preoccupation with it and not being able to refute Sheehan, Stiles, Barnett, Jennifer until August 25th, 1999, Wednesday, and August 26th, 1999, Thursday, 4:30 a.m. She edits her TV program all day Tuesdays. Glendora only sues judges and encourages others to exercise the right. But Vickers encourages citizens' arrests of judges who violate civil rights. Vickers says go out and make a citizen's arrest on these judges when they violate your civil rights. And Senator Charles Schumer, Judiciary Committee, has started an action. Today is September the 7th, 1999. The time is 7:03 p.m. Franklin is wrapping the programs of Chat with Glendora to go to 5 cable systems in Long Island and to go to Yorktown and Yonkers and Rockland. Franklin had a bad leg and a good leg, and a week ago tonight he fell and ruined the good leg. Ishvan was kind enough to get Franklin this wheelchair. Glendora only sues judges and encourages others to exercise the right. But Vickers encourages citizens' arrests of judges who violate civil rights. Vickers says go out and make a citizen's arrest on these judges when they violate your civil rights.